Good afternoon. Am I audible? I hope so. Good. So I think we can go to the next slide, please. The next one again, I think my subject matter is will be on data, information, and knowledge areas. I'll be highlighting my presentation with regard to some of these key thematic areas on marine spatial management. So this includes it's on skills identification and development, data and information clearinghouse, stakeholder engagement, equipment infrastructure, legal and institutional environment, reference materials, case studies, then grounding of new paradigms, and finally on new sources and communication. Next slide. So talking about skills identification and development, I think by now we know that MSP is a multidisciplinary undertaking. And in this instance, the most supportive structure would be, in terms of multidisciplinary undertaking, we would need to have this kind of information on skills readily available on a database of experts. And that such information should be made very current. You can see on the left graphics, there have been a lot of efforts in our community of practice in IOC UNESCO to come up with the Ocean Expert database, where we can speedily refer and know who is skilled in what areas, and also to know what events are coming up, so that we can harness this as quickly as possible. So I foresee a knowledge platform where in Kenya, where we can detail all our existing skills and know who have been trained in what previously. And for us, while doing that, it will also help us to do a skills gap analysis so that we know which areas we need to strengthen as far as the skills development is concerned. Next slide. Next slide. It goes without saying, I think I've had quite a number of people. Should it be the last? Is this the second one? I hope so.
Hello, the second one.
Is this the next slide? I think you've skipped another one.
Okay, let me go back. Is it this one?
Yes, this one.
Okay.
So a number of people have made reference to data being available to assist in making decisions. When we talk about availability of data, we would need to have a portal that contains data sets on environment, social, and economics. This is the only way that we can understand what is happening and what are the future demands on marine space and, of course, on biodiversity. So the implication here is that we need to set up a select group to develop a concept on such a portal, of course, as well as operational procedures. Earlier on, I think in the 90s, we already started pioneering with, together with Nairobi Convention. In fact, this was a regional initiative to come up with a data clearinghouse. So the good thing with the clearinghouse is that we can have a virtual management where we do quality control, and also we make sure that such data sets are readily available for all stakeholders. So again, we need to have in mind putting in place a similar mechanism as a clearinghouse for data and information availability. Next slide. Stakeholder engagement. gathered again from the raft of presentations that we've gone through. MSP is a participatory process, and so we would need to have multi-stakeholder dialogues. Now, these multi-stakeholder dialogues need to be facilitated by decision support tools. This is the only way that we can then get knowledge on how we evaluate trade-offs, how we can identify the most appropriate multi-objective scenarios across different sectors and interest groups. We need to aggressively do a baseline of stakeholder, compile this and continue to review this continually, because sometimes you find that when you've done what you believe is a comprehensive multi-stakeholder list, you discover that you have left out some key stakeholders. So this is very important. It's therefore imperative that the country address this important decision support tools. I think 2 weeks ago, we had a presentation by a group from the Swedish Agency for Strategic Management. They were presenting a tool called Symphony tool. And that tool is basically useful for strategic level planning of MSP. So we need to embrace these tools very early on in our planning process of MSP implementation. So we really need to emphasize these decision support tools. And I'm happy to say that we discussed even the possibility that we can have a Symphony tool training at the national level in Kenya. So I think we need to discuss this a little bit more again, even offline, so that we start harnessing these tools to inform the process of planning. Next slide. I wanted to highlight about equipment and infrastructure. Actually, I'm only bringing up because we need to synergize on and share out the strength of various institutions that are going to be important on implementation of marine spatial planning. So in this case, we are looking at existence of specialized laboratories, computing facilities, and specialized equipment. Ultimately, we have to map our ocean resources. Otherwise, we don't have much of MSP to talk about. So we need to know our bathymetry of our oceans at the highest resolution possible. We need to bioprospect and know what are some of the other resources that exist in our waters. We need to do stock assessment of our fish resources extensively. We have to map nearshore and deep water resources. We have to know what are the morphology of our oceans in terms of canyons and ridges. These are very important ecological areas. We need to harness our skills or improve our skills on GIS and remote sensing laboratories. I think I had in our PS speech emphasizing also on ocean mapping. We may not be able to do much planning, and especially in our deep oceans in Kenya, there's very little known so far. So these are knowledge areas that have to be strengthened for us to move on with the MSP in Kenya. Next slide. The legal and institutional environment, I'm only alluding to the fact that we need to persuade the stakeholders. We need to convince our national and local policy processes. And for us to do that, it is important that we have knowledge programs that can target the national government. We need to have knowledge programs that can inform our county government, particularly in terms of our resources. I'm showing there, for example, under KCDP project, we started producing brochures that give very snapshot views of what we have in our oceans. Because I believe that we cannot make policies We cannot make strategies, we cannot define effective institutional frameworks without informing these key policy processes on what exists, and we need to do that at very high resolution levels. So there has to be a team that will be very aggressively working on production and delivery of these knowledge tools for the important policy sectors. Next slide. Our reference materials is extremely important again. I'd like to say that key institutions should be encouraged to implement repositories in suitable platforms with proper staffing and with the right policies to make sure that the reference materials can reach out to the various working teams to inform them on the most available information to go into the marine spatial plans. I just want to give the good example of JQuat repository. You can go through that URL to see how these repositories can impact a great deal on availability of knowledge materials. In Kemfree, we also have a repository that provides on I would say desktop availability of the materials that exist in Kemfree to inform us on the conditions and the state of aquatic resources. Next slide. Case studies will be very important, and this should be done in terms of benchmarking or on ongoing projects. We have a number of national initiatives. I've just had my colleagues from WCS give us very good case study of the MSP project in the Malindi area. We have other projects which have direct impact on MSP going on. We have the Kuruitu local marine managed area. We have the Party Island Marine Conservancy. We have a number of other research activities or projects going on. The figure on the left gives us what I would like to see being available. We need to know what projects are going on, what are the objectives, what are the durations, so that when we are planning, we know whether we already have important information being dealt with in project 1, in project 2, in project 3. So it's very important for us to assist us in case studies when we are coming up with our national MSP. Next slide. In the new paradigms, you may discover that even when we are embarking on our MSP planning, that the bulk of our stakeholders may not know some of the new paradigms, some of the new regional initiatives or international initiatives going on. We need to know, even at the national level, what is our contribution in terms of SDGs, because we are already obligated, we are signatories to some of these initiatives. We are just entering the UN Decade of Ocean Science. The bulk of our stakeholder communities should be aware what are the targets in terms of the UN Decade of Ocean Science. We need to know that there are phenomena that have a wider impact on marine spatial planning, including the ocean acidification, marine litter, and harmful algal blooms, just to mention a few. You can see on the figure on the right that marine litter is really of concern. This is marine litter that have been dealt with under one of our projects in Kemfrey. It's not far out from Kemfrey, as you can see. So we need to keep abreast of all these call of actions and also to follow up on how we're doing as a country. Because then we can help us to have a comprehensive marine spatial plan at the national level. Next slide. I'm looking at new sources and also elements of communication. I just wanted you to take note that we have got advances in communication and outreach, and therefore we need to harness the skills that can make us to look at things in a more contemporary way. We need to have involvement in data analytics. We need to have social network skills and opportunities. We need to see how artificial intelligence can contribute to marine spatial planning in Kenya. So I think when we are going forward, we would need to scope the extent that this may be harnessed for efficient implementation of MSP in Kenya. I think I'm going towards my final slide next. I think that was the last one. So thank you very much.